Emma's chest felt like it was closing in on itself. Each breath came shorter than the last, a desperate wheeze that barely filled her lungs. The walls of her apartment seemed to shrink around her as she fumbled for her phone, her vision swimming at the edges. She'd been fine 20 minutes ago, perfectly fine. And then the tightness started. That familiar, terrifying constriction that meant her inhaler wasn't enough this time. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. 911, what's your emergency? Emma tried to speak, but only a soft moan escaped her lips. Her lungs wouldn't expand. Couldn't expand. Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening? Another wheeze. Another desperate, gasping sound that should have been words but came out broken and breathless. She was alone. Completely alone. And she couldn't breathe. I'm dispatching emergency services to your location now. Stay on the line. Help is coming. Emma's knees buckled. The phone slipped from her hand as she sank to the floor, her back against the couch. The room tilted, darkened. She could hear the dispatcher's voice, distant and tinny, calling to her from the speaker. Then came the pounding, heavy fists against her door, a deep voice, commanding and urgent. Fire department, we're coming in! The sound of splintering wood cracked through her panic. Her door, the locked door, gave way with a violent crash, and suddenly her apartment was full of movement and noise and presence. But all Emma could focus on was him. He was enormous. Broad-shouldered and powerful in his bunker gear, he dropped to his knees beside her with a fluid grace that shouldn't have been possible for someone his size. His face came into view. Strong jaw, dark eyes that locked onto hers with an intensity that cut through her panic. And Emma felt something shift in her chest that had nothing to do with her failing lungs. Hey, I've got you. Look at me. Just look at me. His voice washed over her like warm honey, deep and certain and impossibly steady. His hands, large, capable hands, framed her face, tilting it up toward his. Emma couldn't look away even if she'd wanted to. Those eyes held her captive, dark and focused entirely on her, as if nothing else in the world existed. You're having an asthma attack. I'm going to help you breathe. Nod if you understand me. Emma managed the smallest movement of her head. His thumb stroked across her cheekbone, just once, brief and gentle, and she felt it everywhere. He reached for his equipment with practiced efficiency, but his eyes never left hers. My name's Alexander. You're going to be fine. I need you to trust me. Trust him. She already did, and they'd only just met. There was something about the way he looked at her, the way his presence seemed to fill the entire room, solid and unshakable. Emma felt herself leaning into his touch as he positioned the oxygen mask over her face. That's it. Nice and slow. Breathe with me. His hand settled on her sternum, warm even through her thin t-shirt, rising and falling in an exaggerated rhythm. Emma's body responded instinctively, her breathing trying to match his, following the steady guidance of his palm against her chest. She could feel the heat of him, the absolute certainty in every movement. He wasn't just helping her breathe, he was breathing for her, lending her his calm, his control. Good girl, he murmured, so quiet she almost didn't hear it. But she felt it, felt the approval in those words sink into her skin like a brand. Other paramedics moved around them, asking questions, checking vitals, but Alexander never moved from his position in front of her. His hand stayed on her chest, that intimate pressure that was purely medical and yet felt like anything but. His eyes held hers, dark and assessing, watching every flutter of her lashes, every catch in her breathing. Emma's breathing began to ease. The oxygen helped, but more than that, he helped. His presence anchored her, pulled her back from the edge of panic. She became aware of other details, the way his jaw clenched when she wheezed, the tension in his shoulders, the fact that he was closer than he needed to be. Much closer. Better? She nodded and something flickered across his face. Relief, yes, but also something else. Something that made her skin feel too tight. We're taking you to the hospital. Standard protocol for respiratory distress. I'm okay now, Emma managed, her voice muffled by the mask. I don't need... You need to be checked out. His hand moved from her chest to her shoulder, squeezing gently. Let me take care of you. The way he said it made her stomach flip. Let me take care of you. Not let us or let the paramedics. Let me. They loaded her onto the gurney, and Alexander stayed right beside her, his hand wrapped around hers. She hadn't even realized he was holding her hand until she tried to move and felt his fingers tighten reflexively, as if letting go wasn't an option he was willing to consider. In the ambulance, he sat across from her, watching her with that same intense focus. Emma was acutely aware of how she must look. Hair a mess, no bra under her thin sleep shirt, her flannel pajama pants doing nothing to make her feel less exposed under his gaze. But he wasn't looking at her like she was a patient. He was looking at her like she was something precious, something worth saving, worth keeping. The hospital was a blur of examinations and questions. They kept her for observation, pumped her full of albuterol and steroids, and by the time they finally released her 6 hours later, Emma felt wrung out and exhausted. Her apartment door was broken, her spare inhaler was somewhere in the chaos of the morning, and she had no way to get home except... I'll drive you. Emma looked up to find Alexander leaning against the doorframe of her discharge room, still in his department t-shirt and cargo pants, looking far too good for someone who'd been working all night. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. You're still here? My shift ended an hour ago. He pushed off the doorframe and crossed to her, moving with that same controlled power that had steadied her in the worst moment of her night. Come on, let's get you home. She should have said no, should have called a rideshare, maintained the professional distance that was already blurring at the edges. But Emma found herself nodding, found herself accepting the hand he offered to help her stand, found herself noticing the way his fingers lingered against hers just a beat too long. His truck was parked in the fire lane, of course it was, and he opened the passenger door for her with a hand at the small of her back that burned through her borrowed hospital scrub top. Emma climbed in, hyper-aware of how small she felt in the cab of his massive vehicle, how the seat still held the warmth of him from his drive over. Alexander slid behind the wheel, and the space seemed to shrink around them. He was so close. Close enough that she could smell him. Smoke and soap and something fundamentally masculine that made her head spin worse than the oxygen deprivation had. You live alone? Yes. His jaw tightened. Your door's broken. The lock's completely shot. I know. I'll call a locksmith tomorrow. You're not staying there tonight with no lock. Emma's pulse jumped. I don't really have another option. He turned to look at her fully, one hand still on the steering wheel, the other draped across the back of her seat. Close. Too close. His dark eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. "You do now." He paused, and something flickered in his expression. "You can stay at my place. I have a guest room." Everything in Emma screamed that this was a terrible idea. He was a firefighter. He'd responded to her emergency. There were professional boundaries, ethical lines, 100 reasons why she should refuse. But looking at him, at the concern in his eyes, the set of his jaw, the way he was trying so hard to make this seem casual when they both knew it was anything but, Emma found all those reasons crumbling. "I couldn't impose." Emma. The sound of her name in his voice did things to her. "Please." That single word unraveled her. Please. Like he needed this. Like the thought of her alone in an apartment with a broken door actually caused him physical pain. "Okay." Something fierce and possessive flashed across his face before he schooled his expression back to carefully neutral. But Emma had seen it, had felt the weight of it settle over her skin like a claim. The drive to his apartment was quiet, thick with unspoken tension. Emma was acutely aware of every shift of his body, every breath, the way his hand gripped the steering wheel like he was restraining himself from reaching for her. She shouldn't be noticing these things, shouldn't be cataloging the width of his shoulders or the way his forearms flexed or how his profile looked carved from stone in the passing streetlights. She definitely shouldn't be imagining what those hands would feel like on her bare skin. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of a newer building, all exposed brick and high ceilings. Masculine without being sparse, comfortable without being cluttered. Emma stepped inside and was immediately wrapped in the scent of him, stronger here, concentrated, everywhere. "It's not much, but the guest rooms, it's perfect." She turned to face him and found him watching her with that same intensity from the ambulance, like he was memorizing every detail. "Thank you for everything." Alexander moved closer, eliminating the careful distance he'd maintained. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone, and Emma's breath caught for entirely different reasons than it had hours ago. "You scared me." His voice was low, almost a growl. "When I heard you on that call, those sounds you were making, I've never driven that fast in my life." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm okay now." "Because I got to you in time." His thumb moved to her lower lip, and Emma felt the touch everywhere. "If I hadn't, but you did." They were too close. His hand was still on her face, her lips parted under his thumb, the air between them crackling with something dangerous and inevitable. Emma knew she should step back, knew this was crossing every line she'd told herself she wouldn't cross. But she didn't move, and neither did he. "Emma." Her name sounded like a prayer and a warning all at once. "I should show you the guest room." "You should." But he didn't move. His eyes dropped to her mouth, and Emma felt that look like a physical touch. Heat pooled low in her belly, urgent and demanding. She wanted him to kiss her, wanted it with a desperation that should have terrified her. Instead, she swayed forward, just slightly, and watched his control fracture in real time. "Don't." His voice was strangled. "If you do that, I won't be able to." "To what?" His other hand came up to frame her face, holding her still, holding her captive with nothing but the force of his presence. "To remember that I'm supposed to be professional, that I responded to your emergency." that you were vulnerable and scared, and I should be better than this. Emma's hands found his chest, felt his heart pounding beneath her palms. What if I don't want you to be better than this? The sound he made was almost a growl. For one breathless moment, she thought he would close the distance, thought he would take what they both clearly wanted. But instead, he closed his eyes and rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. You've been through trauma today. You're exhausted. This isn't... He swallowed hard. I won't take advantage of you. Even as her body screamed in protest, Emma felt something warm unfurl in her chest. He wanted her. She could feel it in the tension of his body, see it in the way his hands trembled slightly against her skin. But he was choosing to protect her, even from himself. It made her want him even more. Let me show you where you'll sleep. He stepped back, and the loss of his touch felt like mourning. Emma followed him down the hallway, watching the way he moved, all controlled power and barely restrained energy. He pushed open a door to reveal a simple guest room, queen bed with navy sheets, dresser, attached bathroom. There are towels in the bathroom. I'll get you something to sleep in. He paused at the doorway, his hand gripping the frame like he needed the anchor. My room's right across the hall. If you need anything at all, you come get me. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. The thought of him right across the hall, separated by nothing but a few feet and 2 closed doors, made her skin feel electric. He returned moments later with a folded t-shirt and a pair of drawstring sleep pants. They'll be too big, but they're perfect. Their fingers brushed as she took the clothes, and electricity arced between them. Alexander's jaw clenched, his eyes going dark. But he stepped back into the hallway. Good night, Emma. Good night. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. On the other side, she heard him pause, heard his hand press against the wood, and knew he was standing there just as affected as she was. Emma changed into his clothes with shaking hands. The t-shirt swallowed her, hanging to her mid-thigh, smelling like him so strongly it made her dizzy. The pants were impossibly large, but she rolled the waistband and tied the strings as tight as they would go. Looking at herself in the bathroom mirror, wrapped in Alexander's clothes, Emma barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were bright, her lips parted, her skin flushed. She looked like someone on the edge of something reckless. She looked like someone about to fall. The apartment was quiet as she crept out of the guest room. She'd tried to sleep, had spent an hour tossing and turning, her body humming with awareness. She told herself she was just getting water. That's all, just water. But her feet carried her past the kitchen, down the hallway, stopping outside his door. It was cracked open, just slightly, and through the gap she could see him. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands, still wearing his jeans but shirtless now, and Emma's breath caught at the sight of him. All muscle and golden skin and barely restrained power. I know you're there. Emma froze. He hadn't looked up, hadn't moved, but somehow he knew. You should go back to bed. She should. She absolutely should. Instead, she pushed the door open wider. I can't sleep. Alexander's head came up, and the look on his face when he saw her, standing in his doorway, drowning in his clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders, was pure hunger, barely leashed. Emma. I tried. I just keep thinking. Don't. He stood, and even across the room she could feel the heat of him. Don't tell me what you're thinking, because if it's anything like what I'm thinking, What are you thinking? He moved toward her then, each step measured and deliberate, a predator approaching prey. But Emma didn't feel like prey. She felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. I'm thinking about how you look in my clothes, how you fit in my space like you were always meant to be here. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could feel his heat, see the pulse hammering in his throat. I'm thinking about all the ways I want to touch you, and all the reasons I shouldn't. Emma's hands found his chest again, felt his sharp intake of breath. What if the reasons don't matter? They should matter. But his hands came up to cover hers, holding them against his heart. God help me, they should matter. But when you look at me like that, like what? Like you want me as much as I want you. I do. The words hung between them, a confession and an invitation. Alexander's control visibly frayed. His hands moved to her waist, fingers spreading wide against the small of her back, pulling her flesh against him. This is wrong. Then why does it feel so right? He made that sound again, that almost growl that vibrated through his chest into hers. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, their breath mingling, their lips so close she could almost taste him. Tell me to stop. No. Something in him broke. His mouth crashed against hers, hungry and demanding and absolutely perfect. Emma melted into him, her hands sliding up into his hair, pulling him closer, desperate for more. He kissed like he did everything else, with total focus and devastating intensity, like she was the only thing that existed in his world. His hands roamed her back, her sides, learned the shape of her through his two big clothes. When he gripped her waist and lifted her effortlessly, Emma wrapped her legs around him on instinct, gasping into his mouth at the feel of being held by him, consumed by him. Alexander walked them backward until her back hit the wall, pinning her there with the weight of his body. His mouth moved to her throat, her jaw, that sensitive spot behind her ear that made her whimper. You have no idea what you do to me. His voice was wrecked. From the moment I saw you, terrified and breathless, all I could think about was making you mine. Then do it. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes searching her face. If we do this, there's no going back. His thumb traced her kiss-swollen lips. I'm not good at casual. I'm not good at letting go. If I have you, Emma, I'm keeping you. The declaration should have scared her. Instead, it sent heat flooding through her entire body. I don't want casual. I don't want you to let go. His eyes blazed. Say that again. Keep me. Alexander kissed her again, slower this time, but no less consuming. He carried her to his bed, laid her down on his sheets like she was something precious, something sacred. His body covered hers, all heat and muscle and delicious weight. And Emma had never felt more safe or more desired in her entire life. His mouth traced patterns down her throat while his hands explored, learning every curve, every response that made her gasp. She was still wearing his shirt, but the way he looked at her, like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, made her feel utterly exposed in the best possible way. You're perfect. His hand slid beneath the hem of the shirt, palm hot against her skin. Tell me if I go too fast. Tell me if you want me to stop. Don't stop. Her own hands mapped the planes of his chest, the ridges of his abdomen, memorizing every inch of him. Please don't stop. He groaned against her throat, his control hanging by a thread. Emma, if you keep touching me like that, what will you do? His eyes met hers, dark with promise. I'll show you exactly what it means to be mine. Show me. That night, he showed her. He worshipped her with a focused intensity that stole her breath, taking his time, making sure she knew exactly how precious she was to him. When he finally made her his completely, it was overwhelming. Physically, emotionally, every barrier between them stripped away until there was nothing but this perfect connection. God, Emma. His voice was wrecked with emotion and desire. You're everything. Everything I've been waiting for. She surrendered to him completely, to the way he made her feel, safe and desired and utterly cherished. The pleasure built between them like a wave, consuming and perfect, until Emma shattered in his arms with his name on her lips. That's it. Let go from me. He held her through it, murmuring praise and promises against her skin. So perfect, so beautiful. Mine. Yours. Always yours. When he followed her over that edge moments later, the sound he made was her name and a prayer and a claim all at once. They lay tangled together afterward, hearts racing, skin cooling, neither willing to let go. Between whispered confessions and lazy kisses, they talked in the darkness, sharing secrets and fears and hopes, building something that felt far more permanent than one night. Eventually, sleep claimed them. Emma tucked safely against Alexander's chest, his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. Emma woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Alexander's arm heavy across her waist. She was tucked against his chest, his body curved protectively around hers, and for a moment, she just lay there, soaking in the warmth of him. Morning. His voice was rough with sleep, and he pressed a kiss to her shoulder. How are you feeling? Emma turned in his arms to face him, found him watching her with that same intensity as always, but softer now, satisfied. Perfect. She traced the line of his jaw, a little scared. His arm tightened around her. Of what? That this was just one night? That reality will come crashing in and stop. He tilted her face up to his. I meant what I said last night. I'm keeping you. This isn't one night, Emma. This is the start of everything. You don't even know me. Then let me learn you. Let me spend every day figuring out what makes you smile, what makes you laugh, what makes you feel safe. He kissed her softly. I'm not letting you go. Not now. Not ever. Something in Emma's chest cracked open, spilling warmth through her entire body. This is crazy. The best things usually are. He pulled her closer, tucking her head under his chin. Stay, just for today. Let me make you breakfast. Let me take care of you. And Emma, who had been alone for so long, who had learned to rely only on herself, found herself nodding, found herself surrendering to the possibility of being cared for, of being claimed, of being kept. The next weeks unfolded like a dream. Alexander took her back to her apartment to pack a bag, which somehow turned into several bags, and she never really moved back. Her broken door became his project, something he fixed with his own hands while she watched and tried not to think about how domestic it all felt. He worked 24-hour shifts at the station, and Emma found herself counting down the hours until he came home. When he walked through the door, still in his uniform, the first thing he did was find her, in the kitchen, in bed, on the couch, and kiss her like he'd been starving for it. Missed you. Always the same greeting. Thought about you all shift. They fell into rhythms. Morning coffee made exactly how she liked it. His arm around her waist while they cooked dinner together. Late-night conversations that turned into tender explorations of each other. The way he'd pull her against him in his sleep, even unconscious needing her close. Emma met his firehouse crew, endured their knowing looks and good-natured ribbing about how Alexander had fallen hard and fast. She saw the way they watched her, protective and assessing, and understood that she wasn't just dating Alexander. She was being welcomed into his family. She told him about her work as a graphic designer, showed him her portfolio, and watched his face light up with pride. "You're incredibly talented." He traced the edge of her laptop screen, studying her designs. "You should work from home more. I like knowing you're here." It should have been possessive, controlling. Instead, it just felt like care. 3 months in, Alexander came home from a particularly rough call. A house fire with kids involved, everyone safe but close, and Emma knew immediately that something was different. He held her tighter that night, kissed her harder, needed her with an urgency that bordered on desperate. "I love you," whispered against her skin in the aftermath. "I know it's too soon. I know we're supposed to wait, but I can't. I love you, Emma. I've loved you since the moment I saw you scared and struggling to breathe." Emma's heart threatened to burst. "It's not too soon." She framed his face with her hands, made sure he could see the truth in her eyes. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me." His kiss was tender this time, reverent. "You're mine. I'm yours. Forever. Forever." 6 months after that night, 9 months after he'd broken down her door and saved her life, Alexander got down on one knee in the very spot where she'd collapsed, unable to breathe. The same apartment, the same floor, but everything had changed. "This is where I found you, where my whole world shifted and I didn't even know it yet." He opened the box, revealing a simple, perfect ring. "You said yes to staying that first night. Say yes to staying forever." Emma was crying, her hands shaking as she reached for him. "Yes. Yes, Alexander, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her there, on the floor, in the spot where it all began, where she'd been broken and breathless and he'd appeared like something out of a dream to save her. They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the firehouse, surrounded by his crew and her small family. When the captain pronounced them husband and wife, Alexander lifted her off her feet and kissed her like he was claiming her all over again. And Emma had never felt more safe, more desired, more completely his. "My wife." He murmured it against her lips. "Finally, my wife." "Your wife." She kissed him again. "Forever your wife." Their first night as a married couple, Alexander carried her over the threshold of their new house. Not his apartment anymore, but theirs, the one they'd chosen together. He took her straight to their bedroom, laid her on their bed, and kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life making you happy." He kissed her tears away, each touch gentle and claiming. "Taking care of you. Loving you. I'll spend every day loving you back." That night, as her husband, He showed her again what forever meant. Every touch a promise, every whispered word a vow renewed. A year into their marriage, Emma woke up feeling nauseous and immediately knew. The test confirmed it. 2 pink lines that would change everything. When Alexander came home from his shift and found her in the bathroom, staring at those lines with wonder and terror, he knew too. Emma? He knelt beside her, his hands shaking as he touched the test. Are we? We're having a baby. The sound he made was pure joy. He pulled her into his arms and just held her, trembling, his face buried in her hair. A baby. We're having a baby. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes suspiciously bright. I'm going to be a father. You're going to be an amazing father. And you're going to be an incredible mother. He placed his hand on her still flat stomach with such reverence it made her cry harder. Our baby. Our family. Their daughter was born on a cold February night, small and perfect, and screaming her arrival to the world. When the nurses placed her in Emma's arms, Alexander leaned over both of them, this new family he'd created, and Emma saw tears streaming down his face. She's perfect. He traced their daughter's tiny fist with one finger. You're both perfect. We made her. We made her. He kissed Emma's forehead, then their daughter's. My girls, both of you, mine forever. They named her Grace, for the grace Emma had felt that night when Alexander had broken down her door, when he'd appeared in her darkest moment and saved her in every possible way. 2 years later, standing in their backyard, while Alexander pushed Grace on her swing set, Emma watched her husband and daughter and felt the familiar tightness in her chest. But this time, it wasn't fear or panic or lack of air. It was love. Pure, overwhelming, all-consuming love for the man who'd heard her breathless and broken and had decided she was worth keeping. The man who'd crossed every professional line, who'd broken down barriers both literal and metaphorical, who'd claimed her so completely that she'd never been whole without him. Alexander looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. That same intense, focused smile that was hers and hers alone. Come here. Emma crossed the yard to him, let him pull her close with one arm, while the other kept Grace swinging. Happy? She looked at her daughter, at their home, at the life they'd built from one terrifying night and an impossible attraction. Completely. Good. He kissed her temple. Because I plan on keeping you happy for the rest of our lives. That's a pretty long commitment. Forever isn't long enough. And as Grace shrieked with joy and Alexander held her close, Emma realized he was right. Forever wouldn't be long enough with this man who'd saved her life and then built her a home. This man who'd heard her breathless moans on a 911 call and decided she was his to protect, his to claim, his to keep. She'd called for help one desperate night, and he'd answered. He'd broken down her door, broken down her walls, broken through every defense she'd ever built, and in the process, he'd made her whole. Years later, when people asked how they met, Emma and Alexander would share a look. The kind of look that comes from shared secrets and intimate knowledge and love so deep it had no bottom. He broke into my apartment. You called me. Best 911 call I ever made. The save of my life. Because that's what they'd done for each other, really. Both of them drowning in different ways. Her in panic and fear. Him in routine and emptiness. both of them desperately needing to be saved, both of them breathless until they found each other. And now, every breath they took was together. Did you like the story? Do you want a part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, comment which state you're watching from so I can give you a shout out in the next videos. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel so you can stay updated on our next uploads. Thanks for watching!